And Dave, please remember to put your information in the chat so people can reach out to you and join your OB Sangha.
Oh, thank you, Nancy. Yeah, I'll throw a link in right now. That'll take you to a part of my website that talks about an upcoming course I have. But don't just look at that, dig around. There's a bunch of fun stuff on there. I host Sangha via Zoom every Sunday morning. Some of us, Sangha Ocean Beach is its name, and some of my happy SOBs, as we affectionately call ourselves, are here today. So nice to see you, SOBs. So yeah, go check out all the fun at that website. And let me start with a couple of gratitudes. First, I'd like to thank Ruben. One of the incredible sort of perks of being a mindfulness teacher is that you very often get to do a sit before you talk. And that one was amazing. Oh, I can't even tell you. I feel so good right now. I feel so good right now. And as it was happening, right, I was watching my mind wanting to plan what I was going to say, wanting to, open my eyes and look down at my notes and think of an even more clever way to express something, or just be in future mind, right? Because that wasn't happening yet. And so it was so useful for me to be able, with your help, Ruben, to come back again and again and again to my actual intention here, right? Because my intention is not to impart some knowledge to you. Anything I'm going to say, you could read in a book. Well, my intention here is to empower you and myself and us as the Sangha to practice together. And I have seen from my teacher, I'm a disciple of the Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh. He has a school of mindfulness called the Order of Interbeing, and that's why I'm wearing this brown jacket. It's called the jacket of the Order of Interbeing, but I call it the snack jacket because it has really big pockets that are perfect for snacks. And the other name is just too serious for me. So that's why I'm wearing my snack jacket right now, because I sit here as an ambassador of the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh. And when he teaches, or when he taught, he's passed away now. In a couple of days, on the 22nd, it'll be the 1-year anniversary of his passing. And when he would speak, he was very clear about what he was doing and about what he wanted us to do as we were listening. And so I'll start there. He was very clear to say, in his own words, I'll say them now in mine, that I'm not sitting here in any kind of a performance. My objective is not for you, 15 minutes from now to be like, oh, that was so clever, or how interesting. Instead, I define mindfulness as paying attention, but with love. I define mindfulness as paying attention with love. And so that's my highest aspiration for this moment right now, is just to be here with all of you, paying attention with love. Right? And I get to do that, right? I don't have to be nervous about saying the perfect thing or getting it right, because I know that you are here practicing the same thing, that you are also paying attention to my talk right now in a way that's curious more than judgmental, right? In a way that's accepting more than problem solving. And that frees me then, right? That empowers me to just be myself and talk to you a little bit about my practice. I would have been just coming to the call on faith, that's how you were going to hold me. But I was lucky enough to be able to sit with your Sangha just about a month ago. I just snuck in some Thursday and just sat in the back, kind of, and wow, like, I walked away. I couldn't stop talking about you. I walked away being like, okay, in Vietnamese, the word tam, my teacher's Vietnamese. The word tam, T-A-M, with like a hat over the A, means both mind and heart, right? The one word means the two things. And so that means that mindfulness is synonymous with heartfulness. Those two words mean exactly the same thing. And so when I left your sangha last month, I said, wow, like that was a gathering of pure heartfulness. Pure heartfulness. And that's what I aspire to be experiencing as much as I possibly can, right? As much as I possibly can. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. So my story is kind of a fun one. I grew up like poor kid, kind of rough neighborhood in the Bronx in the 1970s. A lot of violence and real world danger. And then from that, I went into the military. I went into the United States Marine Corps, and I spent 5 years there. Ultimately, became a sergeant of Marines. So same thing, a lot of danger, a lot of violence, And when I got out of that, I was pretty lost. I was pretty lost. I kind of just wandered the surface of the earth for about 4 years, from the age of 24 to about 28. I'm 49 now, so we're talking about quite a while ago. And in part, just because I was used to working out so much, I started practicing yoga because, wow, the first few times I did it, I felt it. I was like, oh, this is a really cool way to work out. Like, I'm touching every muscle in my body. Let's do this. Let's try this. And this is back in the 90s. Like, it wasn't quite as popular as it is now. But some buddy of mine dragged me into a yoga class, and I fell in love with it. And then a couple of years in, one of my instructors just tapped me on the shoulder after a class and pulled me to the side. And she said, Dave, are you just exercising? And I answered her very honestly. And I was like, yes, I mean, it's very calming. I like this form of exercise, but isn't that what we're doing here? And thank goodness, right? She sat me down and she said, no, Dave, that is not what we're doing here. Yoga is a 5,000-year-old form of meditation. It's like we stand on one foot and challenge our balance and put ourselves in a situation that's physically taxing and maybe a little frightening and has the potential to embarrass us if we fall. Also, that in that very safe container on a yoga mat, we can train ourselves to stop looking away from our suffering, but instead to look directly at it. Over and over again. That's what you're doing on a yoga mat, right? You're manufacturing some challenge and you're leaning right into it. You're leaning right into it, saying, like, how does this make me feel? Am I afraid? Am I worried about embarrassment? Or do I feel strong and self-confident right now? Or somewhere in between? So that was my first kind of taste of the practice. And I dove in, I dedicated probably the next 10 years of my life to becoming a master yoga teacher and a yoga therapist. And somewhere along that line, I met the writings of my teacher, the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, the late Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh. And it would be very difficult. I could spend hours, I guess, explaining to you like what he taught me that I was missing, that I had missed in the world of yoga. Not to say that it wasn't there. I just hadn't been able to hear it. But I'll give you this one example. So in classic Buddhist teaching, there's this story called the middle way. Right? And the way it goes is this. The Buddha is talking to a group of people, and there's a guitar player there. And he says, hey, guitar player, what happens if the strings on your guitar are too loose? And the musician responds, oh, in that case, no sound. Buddha says, okay. What happens if the strings on your guitar are too tight? And the musician responds, ooh, bad sound, bad sound. And the Buddha responds, and there you have it. This is the teaching of the middle way. Now, when I first heard that, right, without the support of a teacher, without the support of a sangha, of community, right, I heard that with old ears, right? I heard that with the ears of Sergeant Dave. I heard that with the ears of raised Roman Catholic and focused on a lot of guilt and shame in the way that spiritual practice was presented to me, right? So in essence, I already was sitting there, right, reading the teaching of the middle way, thinking that there was something wrong with me. And when I read that, it confirmed it for me. I was like, oh, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Yes, I am broken. Right? I am not in the middle way. I'm all over the map. I'm a wild man. Still. Very much still. And the middle way, right, as I misinterpreted it, gave me permission to punish myself all the time, right? Anytime I stepped off the tightrope, right, whether I got too excited, as I have a tendency to do, or whether I got really depressed, which I also have the long-standing habit of doing. I've dealt with a lot of depression in my life. So it didn't matter, right, whichever direction I stepped off the tightrope onto, the middle way was a club that I could beat myself with. I'd be like, oh, there you go again. You're supposed to be walking the straight and narrow. You're supposed to be in control. You're supposed to be balanced on one foot. But then, with the support of sangha, community, my teacher, I started to see that that's not what the teaching's about at all. Let's go back to the example of the guitar. Let's say I walk up to my guitar and I pick it up and I go to strum it and it's out of tune. Is there anything wrong with the guitar? Has the guitar done anything bad, and should I yell at it or punish it in some way? Is the guitar now useless, and should I throw it in the trash? Right? Very obviously, that none of that makes sense. The guitar just needs to be tuned, and then it'll be beautifully playing again. And that's never going to end. Right? If I set the guitar next to the fireplace, it'll fall out of tune. If I leave the guitar in the cold entryway, it'll fall out of tune. If I just don't play the guitar for a while, it'll fall out of tune. But that's just the guitar being a guitar. That's its nature. We're the guitar. This is what it is to be a human being. Right? There is no perfection. There is no absolute enlightenment. There are only enlightened actions. There are only tunings. And they're necessary constantly. Constantly. And so our practice, at the very outset, as we start to look at our suffering, right, counterintuitively, is not to try to fix everything and solve every problem and straighten every line. But the opposite, right? Our practice is just to get to know our guitar really, really well. Really, really well. And to know, like, oh, this guitar really doesn't like to be cold. Or this guitar likes to be tuned every morning. That's the kind of guitar I have. I start every day with a cold shower and a little bit of time on a meditation cushion. Because that's the kind of tuning this guitar needs. If I do that every day, I'm less apt to get depressed. If I do that every day, I'm less apt to get really, really angry and do something or say something, or even think something that isn't in keeping with how I really feel, how I really want to live my life, who I really am. So it took the teachings of a master like Thich Hanh to start to show me the difference, right? To start to show me the difference. And it was then, pretty late in my life, at this point, I was in my 30s, when I started to realize, like, oh, I've misunderstood this whole game of spirituality. This is not at all about finding a whole bunch of rules that I can follow. This is not about dissecting myself, right, and fixing every little piece of me until I'm something else. This is about love. This is about love. And my teacher, Thich Nhat likes to say that love and understanding are two words that mean exactly the same thing. They mean exactly the same thing. And I remember the first time I heard that, I was a bit horrified. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I know my words. Those two words mean two totally different things. But years of listening, years of reflection on it, and now I see it. If I want to love someone, I have to understand them. If I make you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich out of love, but you're allergic to peanut butter and a single bite of that can kill you, I'm not loving you very skillfully, am I? In order to love you well, I have to understand something about you. And the same is true for ourselves. The same is true for ourselves. And then the more I understand, like once you really understand somebody, like, I'm thinking of like one of my relatives on the other side of the Thanksgiving table who's just always a little bit mean. Why can I still love that person? I can still love them because I understand them. I know why they're grumpy all the time. I know about the hard life that they had. I know how they raised some of their younger siblings in poverty. I know how difficult it was to come from, my parents are both immigrants. Some of my family came over from Ireland and some of my family came over from Ecuador. I'm a first generation American. And so I know about a lot of those sufferings. And so it's not even just that I can love that angry, grumpy relative. I can't help but love them. I can't help but love them because I understand them so deeply. Right? And out of that understanding just comes the love. Right? And so this is what is meant by understanding and love being the same thing. So even now, as you're listening to me talk, right, you might have the idea that it's really important to be memorizing what I'm saying or figuring things out or even understanding. And I would argue that those are all not that important. What I'm inviting you to do is to just be here. And if you do that in a loving way, well, you're going to get to know something about me. You're going to come to understand me better. Right? And when I pass it back to you and you're invited to share and ask me questions, I'm going to get to do the same with you. So I could talk for a long time about these topics, but I really want to pass it back to the group. And so maybe I'll just end with one practical practice. That talk had a bit of the air of esoteric, and that's not my preference. I look a lot at our mindfulness practice, similar to doing push-ups. It's very simple. But it's difficult to do all day. A push-up is an uncomplicated movement, and a lot of people can do one, right? But if you start trying to do push-ups all day long, well, they get difficult very quickly, right? And that's what we're doing here. And so I'm going to offer you one of my favorite push-ups. It's a 3-word practice from the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, and it's the question, "Are you sure?" Because if we have, I think many of you may be able to relate with this problem that I have, right, of being really hard on myself, of looking for the negative, of trying to fix things before trying to love and understand them. Right? So if I know that about myself, then I can catch it, right? I can catch it when I've formed my mind around something, when I've made a really strong decision. I can ask myself the question, "Are you sure?" And here's the kicker. The answer is always no. And so the full practice is, are you sure? No. Because how could I ever be sure, right? I can't read the minds of the other people present. I don't know the entirety of the background of the situation. I am looking at reality through a cocktail straw. I don't have a 360-degree view. Ever. And so I'm not sure. And by reminding myself of that, right, of that obvious truth, I create more space, right? And I give myself more space to love and understand what I'm experiencing in that moment, to love and understand what the other people involved in that conversation are experiencing. So that's one of my favorite practices. Put that in your pocket. Put that in your snack jacket pocket. Well, I'd like to stop there and just open it up to the floor for sharing. I would love to hear how your practices are going and anything that the talk I just gave might have touched, and even if it didn't, any aspect of your practice shared in mindfulness, shared out of love, is just a gift for us. So I would love to hear anything that you'd like to share, and I'm also available if you'd like to ask me a direct question. I'll unmute myself again and do my best to respond. Thank you so much.